It is time. All right, City Council caucus meeting adjourned. First on,
Adjourned?
I'm sorry? No. What's the opposite of adjourned? It's got to be some kind of record. All right, no more fun. No more fun. All right. Business only. All right, first item on the agenda is our towing franchise bid. Chief Rader.
Yeah, so as many of you know, we've had the franchise with airport towing for the last 6 years. We put it back out to bid, and the only real change in this bid versus the prior bid was we changed this one to just a 3-year contract. So every 3 years instead of every 6, this will go out to bid. As a staff, we all sat down and we got input from the officers that are actually using the franchise and got their input, and then we also compared what you can see up here, and this is kind of just a Cliff Notes version of what was in every bid packet. Long story short, as you can see, the bids came in relatively close to one another. The biggest thing that we noticed was if you look at the fees, airport towing came in substantially lower on most of the standard tows, the night tows. With that being said, you know, we have been using airport exclusively for, like I said, 6 years. We've had 0 incidents of damage to vehicles from the tow trucks, and we've had 0 incidents of thefts, which in our line of work, that's a big deal. So we, as a staff, decided that we would recommend continuing to go with airport towing with the franchise. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, but.
Because it is a franchise, we'll have to do a first and second reading. So we do the first reading next week, or I'm sorry, next month. Assuming there's no questions. There are years that this is a hot issue.
Right.
Yep. So 0 thefts, 0 damage. How about complaints?
You know, we do receive complaints. I know Smith's did an open records request. I didn't see it before it went back out. I don't know exactly what the amount of complaints was. It's nothing that. We had 1 complaint that rose to my level last year. It was over a semi-truck that was parked down on the park and ride. We dealt with that. We actually had Mr. Gatlin involved in that. To my knowledge, that was fixed, and we have not had any other complaints that have risen to my level since then.
Thank you.
I just have a comment. I know the last time when we did this, one of the considerations was, and that's why airport towing got the bid, was how quick of a response there is because they're close. When you go with someone else, you're going out a bit farther, so, you know, response time might be of importance, especially if it's on the expressway where it's blocking traffic, you know? So that's another consideration why I think they're a good choice.
Yeah, one of the things that we did look at was sometimes people will show up here thinking that their car is at the police department, even though they get a slip that tells them where it's at. So we did actually look on Google Maps. Walking distance was 1.6 miles from the front door of the PD to airport towing, and it was 3.4 miles to both Smith and Taylor trucking. Actually, it was 3.4 and 3.6. I forget which one.
Just well, maybe 2 questions. Folks that have an accident, they can still, like, if my car was in an accident, I can still say I want it towed someplace else, correct?
As long as it's not blocking the road and we have to get it out of the way.
Right, okay. I I know that some people ask that question and, they think, oh, I have to have it towed there. And unfortunately, my son's been in a couple accidents in the last few years, and I've had some situations where I've been the one saying, no, I want it taken someplace else, and never had an issue with that. So I just wanted to make sure that was still the case.
Yep.
And then the other thing I wanted to clarify, I know when we talked about this the last time, the other reason that we preferred airport towing over others was because they had the size trucks that can basically tow anything. They can tow a semi if we need them to tow a semi, and they can tow a tank bus if they need to, and that kind of thing. So is that still the case? They still have
No,
the capability?
All three companies that put in for it, they were capable of doing that work.
Okay. But the lowest bid is still airport, and, sorry, I can't see all the numbers up there, but the storage fees are the lowest also with airport.
Where are they at? Yeah, it looks like they're within $5. Tractors and trucks, it looks like airport is $10 more than Smith's, but $10 less than Taylor Trucking. Looks like cars, pickups, motorcycles for inside storage, Smith's was more expensive, but airport was cheaper. So I mean, I think
It's all going to balance
yeah,
out.
I think it's a wash.
And I think the distance is a big factor as well. So I agree.
All right,
Is that it?
we'll put it on the agenda. First reading. Okay. Number 2, utility franchise tax. Councilwoman Reckers.
I was not in attendance at the last meeting, but I believe that discussion was had, or at least started, with regard to a wind down, or is that not the case?
No, I believe that Sherry put this on the agenda because you had requested it back in August when we had originally talked about the property tax rate decrease, and we had brought that up, and you had said to talk about it when it was actually time.
Okay.
And this would be,
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted, I missed discussion. I wanted to make sure that it
sorry.
was.
No, there
brought
was
back
no
up.
discussion.
Okay,
It
great.
was just the discussion from August.
Okay, so with the franchise fee, and I know the initial intention was to fund dispatch, and our dispatch program was dismantled in 2018, I believe, or wound down to be dismantled in 2018 when we merged with Kenton County. So what I'd like to see entertained or discussed is looking at winding this down for our Erlanger residents, since it was intended to fund a program that is no longer part of our city. And I understand that this is something that impacts our general fund. It's a significant amount of money, so I think that bringing it down to zero in one particular fiscal year would not be the best decision for a myriad of reasons.
It's approximately $800,000.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money. But I do think there's an opportunity. It may not be much to each household. I know that I think it's a fixed amount per commercial, like it's broken down. It may be substantial more to our business community than our residents, but at the end of the day, my thought process here is it was originally intended to fund dispatch. We no longer have dispatch, so I think it's an act of good steward. Being good stewards to look at winding it down, whether it's over 10 years or 7 years or whatever that decision is just like whatever is decided as a governing body, right? And that can always be halted or stopped we've seen cities around us that have had a sunset plan that has had to be halted due to financial decisions. I just think it is something we should talk about. From an agreement standpoint, I don't know if there needs to be a negotiation period, if we need to be during a contract renewal. I don't know if that has been researched.
Yeah, so I spoke to both the attorneys for Owen Electric and Duke, and, I mean, we can modify this percentage at any time. All they said was give them enough lead time so that they would be able to implement it on customers' bills.
So if we were to look at,
And they didn't really define lead time, like, I don't think it's years. I think probably if we said, hey, we're going to pass an ordinance, it might be 2 to 3 months before Duke or Owen builds it into their system. That was kind of my understanding. But we can do it at any time. They don't care, and it's a pass-through tax.
so if we were to look at 0.5%, for example, again, I don't have those details, we would ask Mrs. Kramer, like, what that would look like and how that would impact our general fund. Giving them a July 1, if we did this in concert with the budget.
And I just threw July 1 out there. I don't know if they could hit us by July 1. Like, they didn't give me neither gave me a firm date. They just said that they would need some lead time
Sure.
to be able to reprogram the bills.
Okay.
So,
But we could do this potentially, discussion in concert with the forthcoming budget and.
absolutely,
and have it. Okay.
but it might not take effect till August or
August, okay.
September. I don't think there's a firm, it's not like the insurance premium tax where it's by statute a firm date. This is just frankly going to be by agreement with Duke and Owen.
Okay.
My experience is Owen's going to move a little slower than Duke. You know, I think if council's interested in this, and this is something that we would take the next steps on, I think we could get a little more concrete information from Duke and Owen that would say, hey, we need 90 days, we need 120 days, whatever. But that was my understanding in my conversations with them, is they just need a little lead time to reprogram the bills.
So if we.
Because I don't know how far in advance even their bills are, right?
Sure.
Worst case scenario, we would just collect a little excess revenue for a few months.
But is this something that we want to consider looking at sunsetting or taking down, given its initial purpose? And, I mean, right now, it's taxing just to tax, as far as I see it. Would we be able to look at, or be provided some financial data, Kara, for our next meeting to determine if we want to take it, whether it's 0.5% or whatever that plan would look like? It was,
So are you wanting numbers like the last 3 years, or what do you want me to give you, so I can?
Can I take this one?
sure.
Okay, so what we have for the projections for next budget, I would say on a 0.25% increments, what the decrease would be. So take that, it's approximately $800,000, and what would the, a 0.25% decrease, what would 0.5%? And keep going and see how it builds up, okay?
All the way up to,
All the way up to 100% would then be,
And it does fluctuate, because like last year with the cold temperatures, there was a lot, so it will fluctuate some, but I can give you some kind of data.
if we just use the projections that we have,
Okay.
that would be good.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.
$800,000 is a sizable amount of money to just eliminate. So I think that by taking like at least a tactical approach at looking at what that incremental decrease would look like would be, I don't know, the right thing for our residents. And we can, I guess, maybe discuss it at the next meeting as to what approach we want to take. And
Yeah, we can get the information out to you guys, and if we want to just talk about it at the council meeting, that's not a big deal. We can just put it on new business or old business, one of the two, right? Yeah, that's fine.
groovy. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Number 3, housing choice voucher, Councilwoman Jennifer Jasper Lucas.
Thank you. I know we talked about this during our last meeting with Mr. Erlanger, and I did a little bit more research after he spoke, and I spoke with Shelley Warner. She is the Families and Transitions Coordinator for Erlanger Ellesmere Schools. So basically, her job is to assist families who are typically in a housing crisis, and, or not necessarily a crisis, but are looking for housing. And one of, her role is to, obviously with the school district, is to try to keep those kids in a stable situation so they're not uprooting their whole lives and moving to a different school district. The reason I called her is because I figured that she would probably have some insight on what the process looked like for someone applying for Section 8 housing. And I really wanted to understand what the process was from a tenant perspective. I also wanted to confirm some of the information that we got from Mr. Erlinghaus. And I found out that some of the information we got from him may not be totally accurate. So I'm sharing all of this just so we understand. My understanding is we're basically saying we're going to sign an interlocal agreement to now change our contract from contracting with the city of Covington to the Housing Authority, and that's federal money that is being spent. That's our tax dollars being spent on this, the administrative side of this process. And I feel like there's some things that could probably be improved, and I feel like this is an opportunity to say, we'll do the interlocal agreement, but here's some things that we want to be done before we do that, or here's some additional questions or some suggestions that we have. I understand that some of these things are probably mandated by HUD. Some of these procedures are, but a lot of these things that she shared with me seem more like just internal processes that could probably be improved on. So the other thing I just want to bring up is I think we're all very well aware that there's an affordable housing crisis in general, but specifically in Northern Kentucky. And we need to be able to treat people who are seeking affordable housing with dignity, and hopefully make the process a little bit easier for them. So just kind of want to walk you through what she explained the process is. So I understood Mr. Erlinghaus to say that folks could come in and fill out an application on paper, and that there was no online application. That's actually the opposite of what she explained to me. And there is only an online application. You cannot go in and fill out a paper application. In fact, you can't even get any assistance with filling out your application if you need it. There's no application in other languages. It's only in English. The online application, when you fill it out, is fairly lengthy. It does not save. So if you guys have ever gone online to fill out a form or whatever, and it's lengthy, you enter all your information, and if you don't have time to finish it right then you have to start over from the very beginning. If you have a family of 5, you have to have all their information. You have to have their social security cards, all of that info right there in front of you. You have to enter all of that. So for example, my family, there's 7 of us. If we were all applying to live someplace, that's 7 people's information that I would have to enter, which is, a lengthy process. So you fill out the application online. No one can assist you. So even if you have like a learning disability or something, there's no one to help you with that. Then you are put on a waiting list. Then you have to call and check your status to see if your application's been approved. No one can call other than the resident. Then if you are approved, you're then told to bring in all your documents that you've already pulled out. I don't know about you, but I don't know where all of the people in my house's social security cards are, and may not be able to find those on easily. So you then have to pull out all those documents and take it to a pre-designated appointment. So if you're told to be there at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and you can't make it at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday because you work, you go basically back to the bottom of the list and you start the whole process over again. There is no list provided to applicants of units that are available. There is a list that exists, but it is not kept up to date. Basically, if the applicant is approved, then they have to find their own housing. So she said some people are resourceful, and some people can find a unit, and some people can't. And they just kind of sit on this list. And that's it. If you don't find anything within 90 days, the whole process starts over again, and then you reapply. So it's not a user-friendly process at all. I realize that some of these things, again, may be required by HUD, may not be anything they can do anything about, but I think there's probably some processes, parts of these processes that could be improved. My concerns that I have, that I shared when Mr. Erlanger spoke, was the processes. We, as a city that would have we have 150 units in Erlanger now that are, approved as Section 8. We would have no representation on the board that makes decisions for the Housing Authority. That concerns me. I would like for them to change their name to Housing Authority of Kenton County. The Families and Transitions Coordinator, when I said, I think the name being Housing Authority of Covington is very confusing because it makes me think I got to move to Covington. And, my family's in Erlanger and I want to live in Erlanger, and I happen to, have a temporary housing need or a crisis that's put me in a situation where I need some help, and I don't want to uproot my family. So I think the name change needs to happen. I just, I don't think these processes are friendly to somebody who works, and we want to encourage people to work. And I'm just concerned that we're not going to take this opportunity to try to improve the process. Evidently, this interlocal agreement's existed since the 80s. I honestly, before we had this conversation, didn't know who managed the housing, the subsidized housing in Kenton County. I didn't know how the process worked. So I've learned a lot through this, and I feel like this is an opportunity because we're having to sign a new interlocal agreement to say, yes, we'll do this, but here's some things we would like to see changed. Because it doesn't sound like we have a lot of alternatives. I don't know that there's an alternative. We're not set up to manage this ourselves. We don't have the infrastructure to do that, so I'm not proposing that. But I am saying that I think that we should suggest some improvements that could be done and have the expectation of some representation on their board. Because it concerns me that only Covington elected officials will speak for all cities in Kenton County with this organization. And I look at it like any other county-wide initiative. It's, we have representation on PDS. Why should we not have representation with this? So. You're on the Housing Authority Board? Then why did Mr. Erlanger say that it's only people from Covington who are selected?
Covington appointed.
Do what?
Covington appointed people. So the Covington appoints the people to the board.
But they don't necessarily.
They don't have to be in Covington.
Right, but it also doesn't say that they have to be from other cities. And that was my question to him, was who represents our interest?
So when we joined if you remember, I guess it was last year sometime, we joined the Covington Housing Authority in order to.
That was the home consortium.
Are
they the same?
Consortium is under the same umbrella.
under the same umbrella, but I don't.
I don't know if they're the same.
I don't know if
It is under the same umbrella. This is the same organization that runs the $10,000 down payment loan. This is the same organization that would handle the Section 8 housing.
So the city of Covington came and presented to us on the home consortium. And is that now being transferred to Housing Authority, or it's always been the Housing Authority?
It's always been at Covington Housing Authority.
That's interesting, because that was not something that I was aware of.
Absolutely was part of it. That's always,
Did any, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I don't recall ever hearing about the Housing Authority, and I don't understand why the city of Covington would present.
federally.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I'm completely understanding.
They're two separate programs. However, they are housed under the same, so it's it's federal funds. Help me out, Jack.
I'm pulling up the ordinance. It's not something that I was,
I think the naming convention is being intermingled. One is the Housing Authority of Covington, one is the City of Covington, right? So,
but this was all handled by the city of Covington prior to this interlocal agreement.
correct, but when we're talking about the home consortium that I think was 2 years ago, I don't recall under which entity we were discussing it, so I think that that's where some of the
I'm
confusion
trying to
comes
pull
from.
it
'Cause
up.
this is-
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up.
But I asked Mr. Arlinghouse, who's on your board? Who appoints those people? And he said, the elected officials of Covington. And I said, so how are we represented? That would have been a good time for him to say, it's people from all over Kenton County. Because I took what he was saying as, it's people from Covington. My other concern is that there's no criteria for who's on that board. So it could be people from Covington, or it might not be. But, you know, if you look at other countywide boards like PDS, you have to have a certain number of people from different municipalities so that everyone's interests are represented.
I mean, we can look into what modifications they might be willing to make. I know when I spoke to their attorney, he made it seem like this is pretty ironclad federal law. We can push back. I have no issue pushing back. Can you email me kind of some of your proposed things? And maybe we can basically put things that are recommendations, right? Like, we need to make it more user-friendly, or we need to do X, we need to do Y. I don't know if it will have the force of law, but I certainly think we can speak our mind on it. I have no issue with that. So if you want to email that to me, and then we can, in the next 7 to 10 days, try to build those changes into the interlocal agreement and just see what pushback, if any, we get. You know, my understanding is, and I have had nobody tell me otherwise, and I've reached out to KHC, where nobody returns my phone calls at KHC, because I had heard from someone that KHC would monitor this program if we fall out. I have not had any proof of that. I don't know that. All the information I have received, and again, if someone has other information, bring it to my attention, is that if we don't sign the interlocal agreement, that the landlords in this area will lose their Section 8 housing.
That's absolutely not what I want to happen.
But I just want to make sure,
Right.
if anyone has information otherwise, I would like to know, because I have not heard, that's what I keep hearing from everyone. It's like, we really have no choice. We have to do this. We have no choice.
Right, we might not have a choice, but we can also say, you're getting money for this from the Fed. That's my tax dollars. That's all of our tax dollars. And we want things to be a little bit easier for the tenants. And we want some representation on your board.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's what I don't think we're going to have any opportunity to change that, but we certainly can push back and see and have them prove to us why we can't. I have no issue with that at all.
I wasn't real satisfied with the answers that I got from the presentation. I didn't feel like I got the information I was looking for, and then when I spoke with somebody who actually sees what the tenants are dealing with, I heard a very different story than what Mr. Erlinghouse was telling us, and that's what concerned me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the website right now. The app is, I mean, you can pull it up on your phone.
I was on the website on my iPad. Yeah.
It looks like you don't have to have a social security number because they assign you an ID, because I checked the box saying I don't have a social security number because I didn't necessarily want to put my social security number in anyway. And it looks like they assign you an ID. You know, I don't know. I can do a little more digging to see if this is like the government's form. Or
Right, I don't know if it's a third party that they can select, or if this is the app that HUD gives you and you have no way around it.
So why don't you email me your thoughts, and we can communicate over the next 7 to 10 days, because again, I don't think we have any option but doing a first reading at our next meeting, but we can certainly make suggestions, proposals, we can see if they listen to us, we can be loud. I agree. I mean, the residents of Erlanger need to make sure that this is a process that people understand, but this also, it sounded like in talking to Steve, number one, I don't think he fully knows what he's gotten into yet because he's not running the program yet. Right? I kind of heard that from him. But it does seem like maybe they were going to try to make things a little more user-friendly. I remember him mentioning something about putting kiosks up in the community.
I actually mentioned that to Ms. Warner, and she said, oh, that's great. Because I said, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. And I said, does that seem to, be, and she's like, that's great. She's like, I'm all for that, because that's more than they're doing now. Because nobody can go, like if you don't have access to a computer, you can't fill out the application. And that's where she said, if they would have a kiosk, that would be great. So I did get the impression they were trying to make it more user-friendly. And it makes sense what you said about maybe he doesn't realize what all he's getting into because they don't manage it. I wanted to understand what the process was. I always try to put myself in somebody else's shoes, because these are shoes I've never been in before. And we're making a decision that affects other people. All of our decisions affect other people. And so that's the approach that I take, is I put myself in the shoes of that person who is going to be experiencing, the ramifications of the decisions I make. So that's why I looked at it from this perspective. And if there's something, that we can do to make the process a little bit better.
So just email me your thoughts, and then let's just get them engaged in the conversation over the next 7 to 10 days. And there's nothing stopping, I think Steve said he was out of town this week, I think is why he wasn't at our meeting, but there's nothing stopping UI and others to meet with Steve over the next 7 to 10 days. I have heard nothing from anyone that says we have any choice, so I just want to reiterate that I don't want to put people in a lurch because we don't do something. But I know that, you mentioned to me that you thought that KHC would be the fallback. I can't get anyone at KHC to even return my phone call. I'm sorry? But, I mean, again, if there's other communities that are pushing back, I'd like to hear what options they have. I'm sure that Kenton County probably is a part of this as well, right? I'm assuming people in unincorporated Kenton County have Section 8. I say I'm assuming, but maybe there is no Section 8 housing in unincorporated Kenton. I don't know that.
That was discussed. So Joe talked to the county, and the county had no interest in taking this over, trusted the Covington Housing Authority to take this over fully, and I haven't heard any other city having an issue. This is not something that we have a choice. I get what you're saying. However, we also have to understand we don't have a choice here, because we cannot take on this responsibility. That would be absolutely irresponsible of us. So.
No, that's exactly what I said. We have no infrastructure to do this. I don't think that Erlanger should take this on. But I do think.
We also can't hang demands over people's heads as like potential.
I never used the word demand.
Well,
You did, but I didn't.
You are saying you have a list of things that you want to be accomplished.
I said, these are things that I think they should try to do. They should try to improve the processes. That's all I said. Never used the word demand, never said, I'm not going to agree to sign an interlocal agreement if they don't do these things. These are suggestions that I have based on conversations I have with people who actually deal with these things on a regular basis. And there's housing authorities of other counties. They would probably be glad to take over. Just because they're not in Kenton County doesn't mean we can't sign an interlocal agreement with them. I'm just saying, when I asked if, what other cities were asking, it was kind of like, nobody's asking us, you don't have much of a choice. And I don't like, when somebody says, well, it's been this way since the 80s, it's got to stay this way. And I don't think, you're one that always says we should try to do things better and different. This is an opportunity for us to say, maybe we don't need to do things like we've done since the 80s, just because it's always been that way.
And while I do like to do things better and different, as you say, I also understand that there's a way to go about it. And, providing your suggestions to Jack, great. I don't know if we'll be able to get an answer between now and actually having to go forward with the piece of legislation, and that's my only concern, is that we might not have an answer to all the suggestions that you put forward, so we might have to move forward with the...
Right, and my recollection of the document was we had a 30-day out period. I'll confirm that, and we can look at that again, but I think the current interlocal and the new interlocal does, on written notice, give us a 30-day out. So I don't think we necessarily have a shotgun to our head. I think we have to pass the interlocal agreement, but there's nothing stopping us from engaging in these conversations.
Totally.
So
it just can't be the end all.
Again, never made a demand, just made suggestions.
Either one. I don't know who was up first. There's three.
I just have something short to say. I think we need representation from all the cities. Right now, we have Mayor Fetty, but if something changes, I think all the municipalities should have someone assigned, whether it be council appointing or the mayor appointing somebody to sit on the board like we do PDS. That's the only thing that worries me. We may not always have representation. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I thought when Mr. Erlanger was here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he said that when they make the change, that's when they were going to introduce a common place with the kiosk. I thought that's what he said. In other words, we don't have them now, but I thought they were going to make that change. Does anybody else remember that?
Yeah, I think that was one of
Okay.
his suggestions.
Yeah, so I mean, when you checked with that lady from the Erlanger-Ellesmere School District, she was right. There is nothing right now, but they hope to improve that.
I said to her, they're buying kiosks, and she said, that's a great idea. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I clarified that with her. I told her that they didn't have those now, and she knew that, but when I told her that they were buying those, she agreed that was a great idea.
Yeah, because those people definitely need help. I mean, I taught high school, and those kids, they're well-educated, and I'm not saying that the people that are homeless aren't, but I'm just saying that, a lot of people need help on the computer, not just, and like you said, they may not even have a computer, so if they have a local place where they can go and do this and have help, that's great. That's what I think we need. So ask them if that's the plan, Jack. I mean...
yeah, absolutely.
Because we definitely need to help them. I mean, and then when we spoke to Mr. Erlanger afterwards, he said if we wanted to improve things, that we would have to encourage more landlords to do Section 8 because that's on a volunteer basis. So, I mean, we can't force people to do it, but if we could encourage people, and I don't know how you do that.
So I have a couple of comments. I think it is a completely reasonable ask to have, for our governing body or the mayor to be the appointment, like to make the appointment for someone to represent Erlanger on the housing board. I understand the current language being used is our back is against the wall, it's all or nothing, right? I think it is a perfect, I understand that asking them to change their name and the litany of other requests that we have may not be attainable, but I do think it's reasonable that going into this new modified agreement post-1985 or however old the other one is, that each city that is represented by that quasi-governmental agency has the selected representation. I think it's a completely reasonable ask. Secondly, what is the actual deadline for this interlocal agreement?
So they have, Covington has to transfer this to the Covington Housing Authority by July 1. They have to get it approved by the state. And when they get approved by the state, they need to know who's in it. So they're telling me that they need it by the first to second week of March to follow that whole process.
And then I had a question in the email when it originally was circulated with regard to what the obligation of the city would be. It was vague language on the interlocal agreement as to, it says like city supports the effort, and I want to know what that means, what that entails, what that puts us on the hook for. I think it's a reasonable ask.
Yeah, and we can get a more concrete answer. My understanding was we're just to, when people call us, say, hey, you have to call them. Like it's a pretty low-hanging fruit, but we can get that ironed out.
That's just in writing would be appreciated.
And we can build stronger language into the interlocal that says exactly what the ask is.
Thank you. I would like to see Erlanger to have a local accessibility to the application, that we would have resources ready here in this city other than having to go to Covington or some other location to make the application and have the assistance with the application.
Just one quick question. How long is your term on the board, Mayor?
I was incorrect. I'm on the Home Consortium Board. He's looking at the board right now.
And how long is that term, just since we were kind
Oh,
of...
it's a forever term. Like, it's always the mayor of this Erlanger.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I looked up the Housing Authority of Covington Board of Commissioners. Now, what I don't know is, is there a board above the Board of Commissioners? This is what's on their website. We can get more information. I don't know who any of these people are. I can circulate this list to council after the meeting, but I mean, it's 5 people that I don't know who they are. They're not. I mean, I know who one of the 5 is, but I haven't done a deep dive as to geographically where they're at. I mean, one is the mayor of Covington, and others do not appear to be elected officials. They're not elected officials in Covington, at least, so I don't know. We can find all that out. What I don't know is how we could change. I mean, we're going to have to look at their bylaws to see what changes could be made, right? So they would have to change their bylaws to change who's on their board.
Well, one of the things that he mentioned that I was a little bit confused about was that I guess the original agreement with HUD said, because it was between Covington and HUD, that Covington had the authority to appoint the members. I understand that that's what existed when the original agreement was done. But if that agreement is now changing, to me, it seems like the logical time to also change who appoints that board. And if it can only be 5 people, then maybe you pick the 5 cities that have the most, the biggest population. I don't know. We have other boards that all of Kenton County is somehow represented, and there's a formula for choosing how that's done. And I feel like, a majority of council has spoken and said, we at least need some representation on this, because our interests are not being represented if it's just not necessarily being represented, if it's just Covington choosing this board. So, and to the other comment about accessibility, because the application's online, I mean, that, basically gives people access. I don't know that we have the capability here within the city building to set up a computer, but I know that the library obviously has, the Erlanger Library obviously has computers that are connected to the internet, but I don't know if they are allowed to provide assistance. I know that Ms. Warner that I spoke with the school district obviously can provide assistance to folks as well. So that would be a way for people within the city to access the application. I don't know that we would have the ability to say we want a kiosk here. I wouldn't necessarily want to take a kiosk from somewhere else either if we have a if we have other resources. But I do agree that we need to have some accessibility for people.
Any other discussion? Okay. So are we putting it on the agenda?
Yeah, we have to, but just have a fluid conversation with me over the next 2 weeks, and we'll keep trying to do what we can and engage them in conversation. But we have to put it on for first reading next month.
Right.
All right, resolution, my bad. Yeah. So I'm the 4th item on the agenda, and this popped up today. And it's my error. It's not the EDGE incentive, it's the KBI incentive. But it's an interesting situation. So we received a call from Linda Rossetti with BNKY1 or whatever the new iteration is. Kimberly Rossetti, yeah. Whatever. They now are monitoring, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they used to be Triad, right?
Yes.
So it's the agency that we all knew as Triad. They are the agency, and Kimberly's been very helpful texting me tonight, so I did not mean to disparage her in any way. She's been helpful. So they are the local agency that monitors the state's KBI program. And the state, since the state keeps lowering the personal income tax, the state wants us to remove from the ordinance that we passed with Atlas Air back in 2021, the reference to the Kentucky personal income tax credit. So in our ordinance, we provide a 3% Kentucky personal income tax credit, but they're not doing that anymore because they've lowered the income tax rate. So that income tax rate, and I just got the new ordinance from her, it's a weird percentage. So it's going to be 2.7% instead of 3%. But they want to just remove all reference of that since the state every year is possibly lowering the income tax credit. So this has absolutely no impact on Erlanger. It doesn't change the credit that we're offering. It's just lowering the credit that the state is offering because the state is lowering their income tax rate. So we are going to have a first reading at the next meeting with the amended ordinance that literally just deletes out that reference to the Kentucky personal income tax credit. We're awaiting the state approval of the proposed ordinance. The reason this is being rushed is Atlas Air has not received final approval yet from the state for their KBI incentives, and they wanted to do that on Thursday, and I said, there's no way we can do 2 readings by Thursday, and they said, well, we'll do it next month. So we might have to do a first reading in March, and then a second reading as a special meeting at our caucus meeting to get in the state's imposed deadline of us modifying this ordinance. So again, it has no impact on what we're doing as a city. It's just the state needs the reference taken out of it being a 3% credit since the tax rate lowered. Anyone have any questions on that? Does that make sense? Ms. Rackers, you're smirking. Any questions or? Okay. I just didn't know if you had a question. All right.
Okay, that concludes the agenda. Anybody want to adjourn? Ms. Nicely, Ms. Kyle, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Peace.